In the early morning hours of June 6, 1816, farmers in New England stepped out of their homes to a sight that defied the very laws of nature. It was nearly summer, the season of growth and warmth, yet the ground was frozen solid. A foot of snow blanketed the emerging corn crops, and the air carried a bone-chilling wind that felt more like January than June. They called it 1800 and froze to death. For months, the sun had appeared as a dim, sickly disk in the sky, casting a pale, eerie light that provided no warmth. Birds fell dead from the trees, frozen in midair, and the price of grain skyrocketed as the harvest failed before it could even begin. This was the beginning of a global catastrophe that would bring the world to the brink of collapse, yet its true cause remained a mystery to those living through it. To understand the year without a summer, we must travel back 1 year earlier and halfway across the globe to the island of Sumbawa in the Dutch East Indies. In April 1815, a mountain known as Tambora did not just erupt. It exploded with a violence that remains the most powerful volcanic event in recorded human history. The blast was heard over 1,600 miles away. It sent over 30 cubic miles of pulverized rock and toxic ash into the atmosphere, shooting 27 miles up into the stratosphere. While the immediate vicinity was buried in fire and ash, the true weapon of Mount Tambora was invisible. Huge quantities of sulfur dioxide gas were released, forming a stratospheric sulfate aerosol veil. This veil acted like a mirror, reflecting sunlight back into space and cooling the entire planet. By 1816, this shroud had wrapped itself around the Earth, and the consequences began to manifest with terrifying speed. In the United States, the weather became a chaotic pendulum. In May, temperatures would swing from 80 degrees down to freezing in a single day. In June and July, heavy frosts and snowstorms repeatedly struck the Northeast and Atlantic Canada. Families were forced to eat pigeons, hedgehogs, and boiled nettles to survive. The failure of the corn crop in New England sparked the first great westward migration, as thousands of desperate farmers abandoned their rocky, frozen soil for the promise of the Ohio Valley. It was a demographic shift that would change the face of America forever. Across the Atlantic, Europe was reeling from the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars. The continent was already fragile, and the sudden climate shift pushed it into a nightmare. Ireland suffered through 8 weeks of continuous summer rain, leading to a total failure of the potato and wheat crops. Famine gripped the land, followed closely by a deadly typhus epidemic. In Germany, bread prices rose so sharply that riots broke out in the streets. This period became known as the greatest survival crisis in the modern Western world. The desperation was so profound that it sparked social unrest, and in some regions, the breakdown of civil order. People didn't know why the earth had turned against them. Many believed it was the end of days. The darkness of 1816 didn't just affect the fields and the markets. It seeped into the human psyche and changed the course of art and literature. During that miserable, rainy summer, a group of young writers, including Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Mary Godwin, gathered at the Villa Diodati near Lake Geneva in Switzerland. Trapped indoors by the endless storms and the grim and gloomy atmosphere, Byron challenged his guests to write the most terrifying ghost story they could imagine. It was here, amidst the lightning and the unnatural chill, that Mary, who would soon become Mary Shelley, conceived the idea for Frankenstein. The creature, a lonely and misunderstood being born of cold science, was a perfect reflection of the bleak and unforgiving world outside the villa's walls. At the same time, the strange, vivid sunsets caused by the volcanic ash in the atmosphere inspired the painter J.M.W. Turner to create his famous fiery landscapes, capturing a beauty born of catastrophe. In Asia, the effects were equally devastating. The cooling of the northern hemisphere disrupted the monsoon season, leading to 3 years of drought in India, followed by catastrophic flooding. This disruption allowed a new, mutated strain of cholera to emerge in the Ganges Delta. Without the usual weather patterns to keep it in check, the disease spread rapidly, eventually becoming a global pandemic that would claim millions of lives over the following decades. In China, the cold weather destroyed the rice crops in Yunnan province, forcing farmers to turn to a more resilient, though illicit, crop to survive: the opium poppy. Historians now point to this climatic shift as a major factor in the rise of the global opium trade. As we look back at 1816, we see more than just a year of bad weather. We see the profound fragility of human civilization when faced with the power of the earth. The year without a summer reminds us that our history is not just written by kings, generals, and explorers, but by the very atmosphere we breathe. It was a year that saw the birth of the bicycle, invented by Carl Dries because horses were starving and could no longer be used for transport. It was a year that tested the limits of human resilience and forced a leap in scientific understanding, eventually leading to the birth of modern meteorology. The veil of Mount Tambora eventually thinned, and by 1819, the weather patterns returned to a semblance of normalcy. But the world had been permanently altered. The migrations had happened, the masterpieces were written, and the scars of famine remained in the collective memory of generations. Today, 1816 stands as a stark warning of the teleconnections in our world. How a single event on a remote island can trigger a chain reaction that touches every corner of the globe. It is a story of a hidden history, buried under 2 centuries of ash and snow, waiting to remind us how quickly the warmth of our world can vanish. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the coldest summer in history. If you enjoyed this look into the past, please subscribe for more hidden history, and remember, the earth beneath our feet is far more restless than it seems.